All right, guys, what's up? This is going to be episode 2 of putting the four-wheeler back together. So kind of main things we're going over today. You can see I got some things apart here. It's going to be the front suspension and a little bit of the wiring, and then probably showing you guys a little bit of what's going on with the swing arm. So that's going to require a little bit of modification, let's say. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, guys, so I got the suspension stuff apart. It's all been anti-seized, ready to go back together. But before we do that, I wanted to show the differences between some of the factory stuff versus the aftermarket stuff, and then what I had to do to make the aftermarket stuff fit. So coming over here to your factory arms, they're like a traditional kind of bushing style. They got 2 bushings in here, seal on each end, and then caps that go on the ends, and grease fitting, so you grease them every once in a while. And then it's got your normal ball joint on the top and bottom of the spindle like you'd see on a car or something. So you come over here to the aftermarket arms, and they're made out of just tubing, and they've got heim joint ends. So with being heim joints, and then you look up here, these are like the factory perches, or obviously you can see on the lower one I've already got kind of in there. Without these aluminum spacers, they're just a giant gap. So those spacers kind of line everything up front to back. And with every heim joint, there's supposed to be a small and a large one. And you're supposed to, like you can see here on the upper arm, you put the smaller one on the inside, larger one on the outside. And that's how it slides up in there. So this arm does bolt in fine, the top arm. Just got some stainless steel hardware to keep things new and nice. And then you come down here to the lower arm. The front heim joint bolts in fine with the spacers untouched like they came. And that also lines up well, like your lower shock mount is aligned with the upper one. So everything's aligned forward to back. The front bolts in. And then you get back here to the rear, and you can see the heim joint's basically centered in that perch. So to make this work, there's obviously on the smaller spacer side, there's a gap. So I have some aluminum on the lathe, which I've got a little clip of in some pictures. But
do some insider trading. This is not something like
made this spacer for the front side, so that will close up that gap. And then the larger spacer was actually too big, so cut that down in the lathe as well. So now all the gaps are taken care of. And the other issue was these holes are bigger than the heim joint holes. So all the heim joints on the upper and lower arms are the same size. They all take like a 10 millimeter bolt, I believe it was. But if you go over here to the factory hardware, these 4 are bigger, and those are all the lower bolts. So you got a big hole right here. And then in the aluminum spacer and the heim joint, it's a smaller hole. So we ended up making these pieces. Where'd one go? Right here. So it's like a little flange type deal that goes on the outside. And that just adapts the hole basically down to a smaller one. So now they're all same size hardware. Spacing's good. There's no gaps, and everything should bolt up, or it did bolt up fine. So I just wanted to go over that a little bit in case any of you are actually watching this video thinking about getting some aftermarket stuff. Basically specifically for a Warrior, or 87 to 89 Warrior, because after that they changed some stuff around. But certain models you can get plenty of aftermarket stuff, and I'm sure because it's so common you can find some stuff that fits pretty well. But my case, it's a 87 Warrior, or I think it was built in 87, sold as a 88 model year. But anyway, it's just kind of a not as common model. So if you guys have an 87, 89 Warrior and are looking at some aftermarket stuff, just be mindful of stuff like that. In 89, they switched the bottom perches, I believe, for the lower A arm. So I don't know if I was sent arms for an 89 and up, or what the deal was, or they sent the wrong spacers, or like, because if they would have just sent even length spacers for like the back here, it would have been fine. Like, there's nothing really wrong with the arms. It's just, I don't know if I got the wrong aluminum spacers or what the deal was, but yeah, I just made it work. So if you guys have a lathe and some scrap aluminum, you can make some spacers and stuff, or hit me up, I'll make you some, whatever. Yeah, that's situates the front suspension, and now it's all ready to go back together. And then I already replaced the bearings and seals on the wheel hubs, so those should be ready to go. Spindles are together. I got to put the tie rods together. So they give you, with these aftermarket arms, they give you longer tie rods, obviously because things are wider. But I got to put those together. You can see here I got the steering column in, so it's just bolted in right here. And then I was waiting on a bearing and some seals for in here, but all this is buttoned up. So let's go ahead and put the front suspension on and then see how far we can get there. All right, so the front end's pretty much all back together. Steering column, tie rods, spindles, wheel hubs, brakes, rotors, calipers, all that. No brake lines yet. Got to do a little adapter piece to see, you can see it through there. So this bracket where my finger is obviously off center, which works with the factory brake tee. But the new one, I got to make a little strap to move it over to the center. But anyways, it's back together with the stock shocks for now, just to kind of hold everything together. But the front end's all done. Next up is wiring. So you can see everything's just kind of loosely routed in here. It's routed properly. The relays are mounted. This stuff back here is properly mounted. But as far as being tied to the frame, it's still a little loose because we got to get, all the carb, the air cleaner, the gas tank, a bunch of stuff in before we kind of lock all that down. One thing I did was I took all of the old sheathing off, I guess you call it. It's like this kind of rubber stuff. Ripped all that off, and it was electrical tape under that, really old electrical tape. So I peeled all that off, cleaned it all off. It was all gooey and had sand in it and stuff. And used this stuff I got off Amazon. It's like this, some people call it Chinese finger trap stuff. It's just this wire loom, but this stuff I got is split, so you can just kind of wrap it around instead of having to feed stuff through, which is perfect in an application like this with like an existing harness. So you don't have to de-pin anything or take any plugs apart. You just take everything, keep everything in order the way it was routed and tied off and everything. But just wrap it around it and use electrical tape. And I also got this heat shrink tape. You guys can look it up on Amazon if you want to try it. It worked out all right in some stuff, or spots, but it's not as adhesive as electrical tape. So if you need something to really be tight, like around these joints where there's multiple like strands of wire coming out, and where's the other one? One back here. spots where you need to kind of wrap it a couple times to secure it, I use electrical tape. But if you just have like a straight run, it looks good in the end and keeps it from fraying. So try that if you guys want. It works all right. But anyways, all the wiring stayed intact, didn't change anything, nothing. Everything actually worked perfectly fine. Never had any electrical problems whatsoever with this bike. You know, my dad's had it sunk in mud. I've had it sunk in mud. This thing's been through pretty much everything you could do to a four-wheeler, and not one single electrical problem. So didn't do anything aside from clean it up. While I was doing some stuff, my dad said he went through and cleaned it with like some PB Blaster and put dielectric grease on stuff. So all the connections should be good and everything looked all right. So time will tell when we put the battery in there and try to fire everything up. But as of right now, it's all clean, routed, everything's where it's supposed to be. And time to take care of some other things before we finalize that. So one of the other looming issues we have here, which I mentioned a little earlier, and I'm gonna make a whole separate video about it, but this swing arm I got is it's crooked. So it's crooked and it's off center. Might be hard to tell on camera, but if you kind of eye up like the steering column and then in between these back two corners, I got a piece of tape here with a Sharpie center line on it actually. But if you you can kind of see it a little bit actually. So it's off. It's kicked kind of this way, so that's the off-center part, and this this little clamping unit back here is where the axle slides through, and that's not parallel, so I believe that is kicked this way. So my guess is when they had the thing in the jig, I'm assuming they used a jig to weld stuff like this together if they're, you know, making a production out of it and selling them. The only thing I can think of is their jig had to be messed up. So, unfortunate, but, I'll get into it more in depth in the next video, but, there's a couple options we can do here. One is make some relief cuts on some sides and try to just shift it over and square everything back up. And also, worst come to worst, I'll just remake the thing. So the only pieces we would really need to keep is where it mounts to the frame, that pivot bolt up there, and this clamping device back here to clamp the center section of the axle. So this is just tubing in between here. Two big pieces of tubing, a piece in the middle with just normal shock brackets. I guess we probably need to save, or we can I can remake that. That's just for the brake bracket. And then over here for the chain guide, which I can save that. So those are kind of the options we're looking at. Waiting to get some wheels in. I just got the hubs situated, which was kind of another debacle. So I'll get into all the details in the next video probably. The next video will probably comprise of fixing the swing arm, getting everything straight and parallel and squared off, and after that going through the rear suspension, what I got aftermarket there. Once again, a couple of little hiccups I had along the way as far as getting everything to fit and line up and work together. So that's gonna be the next video. I got my Hoosier tires in, so these are the rear tires I'm gonna be running. Fronts are on back order till April 26th. So we'll see what happens there. If I get hung up on them, I can just get a cheap set off eBay to run for now. But wheels are on the way, so you guys will see that in the next video. We'll be situating this rear swing arm and rear suspension, and hopefully everything else will pretty much come together after that. So thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for the next one.